Hello, and welcome to Community Voices, where we talk to Humboldt County's movers and shakers. Paul's guest today is Kati Moulton, Eureka City Council 2nd Ward. And now here's your host, Paul Bressoud.
Welcome to Access Humboldt's Community Voices. I'm your host, Paul Bressoud. Today, newly elected 2nd Ward City Councilwoman, Kati Moulton. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you. As an old civics teacher, I have lots of questions about how someone decides to get in to governing. So I'm going to ask you those kind of things. But first, I want to ask a couple of background questions. I read that you came to Humboldt County in a one-woman show playing the matriarch of anarchist feminism, Emma Goldman. I mean, tell me about that.
Yeah, back in Houston, I'm from Houston, Texas, or a suburb of Houston called Katy. So I've been involved in a lot of different activist causes around working against police brutality and the death penalty, working for labor rights, working for food and housing rights in the city. And a friend of mine organized a festival around International Labor Day. So that's May 1st, and they had this week-long series of events, and everybody was kind of throwing their gifts on the pile, and I happened to have been a theater major. And when I was in school, I had done a monologue from this play, Jessica Litwack play called Love, Anarchy, and Other Affairs, the story of Emma Goldman. And I decided that for that Festival of Labor Day events that I would go ahead and do a full production of the show. It's a one-woman play, so full production is kind of like a big way to say it. It's a table and a chair and person talking, and that's 45 minutes. I did opt on tour to bring along a friend who's a violin player. So instead of having live sound cue, or instead of having sound cues, recorded sound cues, I had a violin player who would she did a really neat soundtrack. She played the music, but she would also kind of add in sound effects or mood things with the violin in very avant-garde ways, which was fun. So I did the play for this Labor Day festival in a venue in Houston. And then there was an activist conference in Austin, and they invited me to come perform the play there. And then I did another one up in a place near Denton, near Dallas. And I got the idea that I wanted to go traveling during the summer. And if you've ever toured with a show, it can be a really fun way to travel, especially on the DIY sort of punk rock end of things, where it's very low budget, So I went onto a website called Book Your Own Damn Life, and I booked my my show to tour up the West Coast. We did, like I said, around 15 shows in 2 weeks, started in San Diego, went all the way up to Bellingham, Washington. And the Humboldt stop was part of our right in the middle, and it was by far my favorite place on the whole tour. I pulled into town right at sunset. I did my show in a barn in the Arcata Bottoms at a place called the Salmon House, which is a punk rock venue back in the day. And then my host there, the person who booked my show, his name was Willoughby, cool dude. He invited my violin player and myself up to Horse Mountain. So I came in, I did an amazing show for an amazing group of people in an amazing situation. I spent the night on the mountain watching the Leonids. Now I'm like a city girl. I was 22 at the time, and I had not slept under the stars ever. So to go from nothing to sleeping up on the rock at Horse Mountain was just mind-blowing to me. Got up the next day, went to the most beautiful beach I had ever seen in my life. After I spent the afternoon on the beach, or while I was spending the afternoon on this beautiful beach, I got a phone call from the head of the theater department at HSU. She said she'd been talking to Arcata Main Street, and would it be okay if I did my show again for them on the plaza? Well, something I didn't know at the time was that at the time, the plaza had a statue of President McKinley in the middle of it. Wow. Well, the play takes place when Emma Goldman, she's in her mid-30s, she is actually on the run from the law because as a firebrand, she riled up this crowd one time, and this man took it upon himself, a man named Leonard Shawgaz, took it upon himself to attempt to assassinate President McKinley. So the whole premise of the play is she's reflecting back on her life while she's in hiding, waiting to escape to Canada because she's, the cops are after her for this. And I did that show on the plaza with McKinley like over my shoulder the whole time.
Unbelievable. And just for historical, to let our audience know, Leon Shawgaz did indeed assassinate William McKinley at a Buffalo trade exposition. And Emma Goldman was indeed thrown in jail for inciting a riot. So there you go.
Now you've spoiled the end of the play.
Well, people should know that. The bottom line is, it is a, if I'm going to have a political career later, it is a real identification to go ahead and choose Emma Goldman to do a play about. I want to ask you about, I'm sorry, go ahead. You want to respond to that?
I was just going to say, it's funny how I ended up with the monologue in the first place is because my theater teacher in high school, I went to a big Southern Baptist, well, it wasn't like a religious school, but it was like it's a very Southern Baptist area and a very conservative school. And for my teacher, my theater teacher just found this monologue for me and gave it to me because she thought I would appreciate it. So I didn't even know who Emma Goldman was when she gave me the monologue, but I definitely appreciated some of the things that she was saying. So it's funny, a very conservative Southern Baptist woman gave me that monologue to do.
Were you a person that had an interest in politics as a high schooler?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm just clearly the purple tie-dye sheep in the family. Right. I'm like up here, I'm kind of moderate. In Texas, I might as well be like neon. I'm so so out there.
And it's Joplin or something. Is Rutabaga Queen an elected position?
Rutabaga Queen is an earned title. Each year, the Rutabaga Queens choose a new Rutabaga Queen. So in a way, you are voted on, but it's more like a competition than an election.
So before your recent victory in the city council election, was Rutabaga Queen the highest office that you had ever held?
Well, I guess technically I was the president of Kinetic Universe, but I think Queen outranks president. But professor might outrank Queen. I'm also an ace kinetic pilot, which is one of the more difficult things to achieve in the kinetic realm.
Well, these questions are important because we're looking at the background of what gets people interested in going into local government. And I think you have a very colorful background for someone who chooses to do it. What made you decide that it was time in your life to run for a position in local government?
Peer pressure, mostly.
Why was it? Because you were someone that was always commenting on things?
No, I have absolutely no political aspirations. And in fact, I always kind of pictured politics as something that wasn't necessarily a good idea for me. I'm extremely blunt, and I have a way of pushing conversations to like difficult things to get discussed, which is relevant in my work. But for a politician, I feel like, diplomacy is really important and helping make people feel comfortable. And I wasn't sure that was necessarily me. But just to go back a few steps, at the beginning of 2020, I left my longtime position as artistic director of the Ink People to go and run Scrap Humboldt. I was hired as their new director over at Scrap Humboldt. So I had no intention of leaving the Ink People, but this opportunity at Scrap came up, and the intersection of art and ecology and community service and education, where the middle of that Venn diagram is exactly where I wanted to be, and it's exactly where Scrap was. And then the pandemic happened, and circumstances and money, and it was all very difficult, and there was furloughs and going away and coming back. So in the end of August, I was actually in the middle of dismantling Scrap. It was just like heartbreaking to be taking this dream job of mine and, packing it down to the ground. ground, rehoming all the pencils. And it was during that time when it became clear that there wasn't a progressive candidate in my neighborhood. And I started getting phone calls from friends and texts from friends, and they're like, "You're in Second Ward, right?" And they showed me the candidate statement from my main competitor, Dot Yeager Wentworth. And I definitely don't jive with what she was saying on a political level. And I started looking myself around for a candidate that could represent my neighborhood that I felt good about. And all these other folks were looking around for a candidate that we felt good about, and there just wasn't one. And I happened to be in the right place at the right time to throw my hat in the ring to possibly take on this responsibility.
Explain to people what the boundaries are of the Second Ward.
The Second Ward is South Eureka. So without having a map in front of me, because it's a little wonky, it has some like stretchy outy bits, but it kind of goes, it's the part uphill from Broadway that stretches along the south end around Fort Humboldt. I'm, between Winco and Fort Humboldt right now in my house. And this sort of neighborhood around here, it encompasses some of the poorest places in town. It encompasses a lot of really hardworking families and a lot of hardworking families that are new to the area. And I wanted to make sure that the person that represents them was somebody that has respect and understanding and compassion for the challenges of being, one of the poorest people in Eureka. Like, this is not that I am necessarily, but it's a difficult position. There's a lot of really great things that happen here and a lot of really challenging things that happen here. And I wanted our representative to be somebody who saw my neighbors as a resource and not a problem.
Do you have issues that are specific to the Second Ward that you set out to help remedy as you went into local government?
My impetus for this was just wanting to be that representative that I felt like the Second Ward needed to actually really connect effectively with the people who are here. That's what it was about for me. It's about connections. It's about communication. It's about getting people access to the power of local government, people that don't necessarily think that it has anything to do with them. But of course, when you're out on the campaign trail and you're talking to people, there's some things specific to the Second Ward. I think the big one's probably going to be the Jacobs campus. A lot of people are really concerned about that. If you look at it from the outside, if you just walk by once a day, walking your dog, or if you just drive by, it just looks like this big derelict fire hazard of a problem. So I was really pleased to be able to go in and kind of look at what's actually happening. Fortunately, there's already a lot happening. In fact, it's being torn down right now. There's a bunch of the lead and asbestos abatement has been completed, and they're taking down some of the buildings, and the rest of it's, I've been assured, is going to be down by the summer. So that was a big concern that a lot of people have, and I'm happy to report that there's a lot of progress on it. I can't take credit for any of it because it was all already happening. But that's definitely one of the main areas of concern. And then the rest of the things are, the things that are concerning everybody in Eureka. Everybody wants healthy, happy neighborhoods. They want to be safe. They want their kids to get an education. They don't want to live surrounded by desperation.
How do you go ahead and connect with your constituents in the Second Ward?
Well, for the attitude, for the soft skills side, I'd say that just generally being humble and coming at every situation with a mindset of cultural sensitivity is really important to me. I want all kinds of people to feel like they can talk to me. I have a lot of experience working with youth, and you have to have this attitude of non-judgment and approachability, and that's important to me. But for the nuts and bolts, I'm leveraging every digital tool at my disposal. My work is in communications. I do marketing stuff. So I have a Facebook page. I have a mail group. I've been hosting agenda reviews for anyone in the public, especially any of my constituents that wanted to come in. So, for example, today, on Wednesdays before the city council meeting, the city council agenda is published by the staff. On Thursday, I have a meeting with city staff to go over the agenda, make sure that I understand what's all there and get all the references and everything. And then I'm going to publish some stuff today. And then on Monday, I'll have an open invitation conversation group with anybody online that wants to come and talk. And so that I can get some direct input or conversation about what's on the agenda in a more casual way than the city meeting itself, which of course is very, strictly structured.
Robert's Rules of Order.
Brown Act.
Exactly. When did you get sworn in?
December 15th.
And so you've been on the job about 2 months, right? Or a month, rather. And
I've been through 2 council meetings.
And what do you think? I mean, have you thought, oh my God, I'm in over my head? Or if you thought this was the perfect place for me at the time? Or I'm going to have to get used to this? Or
it's funny, when I decided to run, like I said, I was right in the middle of shutting down Scrap Humboldt, and I thought I had a little more time to decide. And then all of a sudden, the deadline was upon us. We thought it was 5 days later, but it wasn't. And then there was the split moment decision to are you going to run? Are you going to not? And I sort of just dove into the campaign aspect, which is a completely different animal from doing the actual job. It has this more project beginning, middle, and end to it. But the job is it's really interesting. It's a huge education. I'm actively swallowing my ego in every conversation so that I can say things like, wait a minute, please define that very simple term that everybody's throwing around. Or what is this 3-letter acronym that you're all using because you know what it means and I have no idea. And I just have to be just get over the fact that I don't know what they're talking about. In the concepts, I get the concepts, but there's a lot of fast-paced vocab and jargon and acronyms that people throw around. Getting used to that is something. I could use a definition sheet, And then the main shift for me has been from going from being unemployed, being a stay-at-home mom who's working with marketing clients, to really actively working, when people send me an email, they really need an answer and that kind of stuff. So just getting back into up to the pace that is required to keep up with what's happening in the city, because it's a lot. Plus, the last couple of meetings have been hard ones. I mean, it's not they went easy on us at the December 15th one when we were being sworn in, but the ones leading up to that and then the ones since then have had some complicated and challenging issues.
I don't think that's going to change. Do you see yourself? Is there a way that people help you with the learning curve, or you're just remember those old videos of throwing the babies in the water and they just start swimming, that kind of thing? There you go.
I'm battling on my own. I am incredibly supported. The city staff I'm just impressed every day with how capable a group, every new person that talks to me, and every department head, the chief of the firefighters, everybody is reaching out to me, asking me if I have questions, giving me orientations, taking me on tours. Everybody understands that my job is to be a regular citizen in this job, and that I'm here to understand and be the public perspective in the decision-making process. Nobody expects me to be a poli-sci major as a city council person, thank goodness. Plus, there's other structures in place. The League of California Cities has this whole orientation on things like the Brown Act. It's 4 days. I'm going to start it next week. So there's a big conference thing that kind of teaches us new council members and mayors how to, the law and the nuts and bolts of legislation, what's the difference between an ordinance and a resolution? What is the scope of work of the city council? What can we do? What can't we do? What are we capable of as a body?
So let's talk about what you're capable of. I watched interviews you gave. I've read some stuff. You seem to be tremendously optimistic. Do you feel, take COVID out of the equation, do you feel that this is good time in the history of Eureka to be involved in local government, and that there are possibilities ahead.
I absolutely do. I do feel tremendously optimistic. And the great thing is that everybody I talk to seems to feel tremendously optimistic. Everyone I've spoken to, whether it's from public works or from the schools or from the fire department or from the police department or from the city staff, everybody in their own individual little bubble has something to say about how much better it is right now than it was 10 years ago, and the trajectory that they're on that they see as being really positive. Independently, all of these coming to me all at once, that everybody feels like Eureka is going in a good direction. And I agree. I'm really glad to be plugging into a system that is pushing in the direction that I want to go, instead of trying to, jump on a train and make it go the other direction. It's a good council. It's a good staff. There's a lot of great things happening here and a lot of great opportunities coming down the line.
And now, are some of those opportunities on the back burner given the COVID pandemic? And what is it like to govern and deal with a COVID pandemic?
Well, having not done any governing outside of a COVID pandemic, I don't know if I have a frame of reference for you, but I can say that the plans that people have are long-term and very thoughtful. These are things that have been in the works for years and will continue to be worked on for years. One of the things that surprised me is how much stuff that gets taught that we were talking about on the campaign trail, things like low-income housing development, things like, care for the homeless, like the different stuff that people want to see happening. And when I get on the city side and start looking and talking and really looking into the plans and the agendas and things, it's like there's a lot of great stuff already happening. But it was started 4 years ago, and it's been going through the process because everything is super slow. And then now things are coming to fruition, or they might not come to fruition for a few more years, but just understanding more how much is really going on behind the scenes that is great stuff that people want to see happening. And there's over 300 affordable housing units going up in Eureka real soon, that is going to be starting working on real soon, and then plans for more moving down the line. When people say it's really hard to get housing here, and it is, knowing that solution is something that is simmering, that is baking, in the city's oven is really good to know.
Do you think that's going to be your greatest challenge? I mean, we can end with this question. Your greatest challenge is just as someone who's new to governing is learning the wheels, so to speak, the mechanisms of government.
I think my greatest challenge is the greatest challenge of any city council person, which is to work towards and accept compromise, understanding that my job is to help make things work well, even though it means that everybody's going to be a little unhappy. That's what compromise is, and that there's really difficult situations and really difficult questions don't have simple answers. And it's easy on the outside to go like, well, we have to do this and we have to do that. But then when you're really talking about all the parties involved and accountability, that complex problems have complex answers.
Really, really quick, almost yes or no. You like it so far?
I love it. I want to meet more people in my ward. So come talk to me. Second ward.
Do you want to give an address or something that they can link up to or connect with you on?
I think the easiest thing right now is going to be to find me on Facebook. I'm Kati for Ward 2 on Facebook and Instagram, or my name's Kati Moulton. You can find my listings, my phone number, and my email address through the city. I'd be happy to give those out or publish those. But right now, the easy thing is look for Kati Moulton or Kati for Ward 2 on social media.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for serving. Thank you for going ahead and going through the democratic process and becoming part of the governance of Eureka. For Access Humboldt, this is Paul Bressoud with Kati Moulton, 2nd Ward Councilwoman Kati Moulton, saying goodbye.
Thanks so much. Kate.
This has been Community Voices with your host, Paul Bressoud. Thank you for joining us. represent a nonprofit organization and are interested in being a guest on Community Voices, send an email to info@accesshumboldt.net or call 476-1798. Access Humboldt, local voices through community media.